I had someone ask me about the Workbench that I work on and asked me to kind of explain a few things about it, so I thought I'd just make a quick video. So it's a very fits my budget type of workbench, and what I did was I had some pieces of 4x4 birch plywood that I used to use for a workbench, and I wanted to have a hard top on it with some hardwood. So basically what I have for the workbench is 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. This is birch plywood. You could probably just use regular, but I like the at least sanded. I think that's, well, I don't remember if it's ACX, but sanded 2 sides. You really just need one side, and I like the clean birch because in the tray then you have some clean birch in there. So what I did was I put all 3 of these together. I glued them and clamped them tight. And then what I did was around, well, this is on the top here. Then I just happen to have 2 pieces of like 7-inch, 8-inch birch, which was really hard, and then 1 piece of oak that I had at the end. So I had this all left over. But what I did then is I put, after I had all 3 of these pieces laminated together, and this whole thing is about, the whole thing ends up being about 49-50 inches by 26, and the tray in the back is about 6.5. So I had those pieces of plywood and I glued them all together, and then on the top I glued the hardwood, and this is 3/4 inch. I made a couple for my kids, and I used 3/4 inch because I bought that from the home center. Mine actually has a 13, it's 15/16 inch thickness, because this is what I had. I used to buy my lumber from a lumber supplier, and they gave it to me surfaced on both sides, but it was extra thick. So I had some of this left over, but 3/4 inch will work just fine, just so you get some hardwood up here. And then you'll see that I took a piece of 1x4 oak, and that's what I used for the banding. So there is a little bit of a gap in the bottom, and I just lined this up with the banding. You can see this banding all the way around here, and I just glued that on like this. So then this little inset here, which is 3/4 inch, gives you the tray where you can put some tools in. I find that's pretty helpful. And then the banding finishes the whole thing off, and the banding finishes on this side as well, and that gives you that little tray in there. So I thought that I also would like some way to clamp things to the surface, and before I drilled all these holes for the holdfasts, all I did was I took some of this banding material like this on the edge, and I cut pieces like this that went in between the banding. This doesn't do a really good job, but I left a 3/4 inch opening here. Actually about 1 inch opening. So that's what you see here for these rectangular slots. And those take these things here. I made these, and what these do is they sit in the slot like this or like this, and this allows you to, over here I have 2 holes drilled. This is just a regular vise, but I put a big chunk of a 1.5 inch oak in here, and these little holes hold these little pegs with a notch out of them, and then you can put a board in here, and you can do it upright like this if you want. Clamp it in, and then this allows you to plane it. That stays in there pretty well. Or I have these that are a little bit shorter, so I can put a shorter one in here and then choose a shorter one of these. And if I put this in here flat, then I can do things to both edges and plane right off the end if I want to, and it won't hit that. So this works pretty well. The vise does rack a little bit because I don't have one of those really nice expensive vices, but this works for what I want. So then I also put the holes in the middle here. They work similarly. So if I put one of these pieces here, and then I made these these little dowels with a little stop in the back to hold them up, they will sit in here. One's a little bit taller, one's a little bit shorter, and that will do the same thing. If I clamp this down, there I need just a little bit more room. I'd have to open it up a little more, but and then this will hold it this way as well. This one, because it's in the center of the vise, this holds a little bit better. But I have a whole bunch of these 3/4 inch holes all the way down here. So that works pretty well too. And then I just keep all of these pieces in the tray for kind of easy access. So the other thing that I have is I have these holdfasts. So if you take the 3 of these, this is a question someone asked too, how thick is the bench top? It would be these 3, which would be 3/4 inch times 3, which would be what, 2 1/4. And then if you put the piece on top of it, there'd be another 3/4 of an inch. So this whole piece, once you get everything together, is about exactly a little bit, about 3 inches right there. So these are, give or take a little bit, pretty close to 3 inches. So that's what I have for the bench top. So when these go down in here and you pound them, they kink in there and they catch. I believe when I received these holdfasts, they said all you needed was, I think, 2.5 inches of bench top to grab these. I went a little bit thicker because I like the feel of this. These are pretty nice. These are Gramercy tools, but I bought them on a website called, I believe, toolsforwoodworking.com, a place out in New York. I was watching an episode of the Woodwright Shop, and the camera got in really close and I saw these. You can see the name on there, and that's where I discovered these. They're really, really nice. They're a piece of metal that's actually bent, so they have a lot of spring to them, and not cast. The cast ones can tend to break right here. So these are pretty simple. You just put a piece in here, and I do have in my tray these little pieces of 3/8 inch cedar, because cedar is a little bit softer, and I'll always protect my wood with the cedar. And then one good whack, and I could lift the whole bench with that. It'll hold that board down. You can do your work on it. One tap in the back, and they'll come right out. Okay, so I'm going to show you the front of this, and I'll reset the camera to do that. So this is what the front looks like of the bench, and a lot of this is just really out of necessity. I didn't follow anything, but you can see this is where I store the holdfasts, down here. But I have several spots here where they can go in. All I did was put 2 pieces of 3/4 inch, this looks like just regular poplar wood, that I had here, and they go through a 2x4. So I have 1.5 and 1.5 again, so about 3 inches again. So the reason I did it like this, and you see there's 3 extra holes right here, is there are some times when I need to work on a longer board like this. So what I did is I take these same pegs that I have up here, put them in here, and I can put one in here or way down here, and then the board will rest on those, and then the holdfasts will come up and keep them a little bit low. And that will grab there, and then this one will grab here. And then I can plane this whole board if I want. And I have these so I can work on a thinner board like this if I want, or if I take these out, these can just sit right on the holdfasts, and it can be a little bit lower. One thing I will do is, if I'm going to plane in one direction this way, I'll set the holdfast so they go up against it, so it pushes down on the bite here, and that seems to work really well. But that holds it nice and tight. So that works pretty well for working on longer boards on the edge. And that's how I set that up. Someone also asked how the top is secured to the bottom. And really all I did was put a little triangular piece on the 2x4 base that I have and screw up into it with just 4 screws. That was it. The thing's pretty heavy with all that plywood and all the hardwood on here. So it holds itself on there, but just those 4 screws up through the bottom hold it just fine. And as you can see, the rest of this is just 2x4 legs put together and a 3/4 inch plywood shelf in the bottom. I put a lot of extra screws and outdoor screws, decking screws, fence screws, larger nails down below to give it more weight as well. And just quickly as we wrap up here, these are 2 benches that I built kind of the same way, except they're all oak because I used up all of my birch, which oak is a really hard wood as well. And these I put just a regular vise in here. That's an Irwin vise. Looks like a 7-inch vise, and kind of notched this out in here so that it would sit flush with the side. But this is made the same way: 2x4 base, 3/4 inch shelf, and then 3/4 inch top. Their tray's a little bit smaller than mine, just because of the nominal size lumber I bought at the store. But this also has the plywood, 3 layers of plywood, and the 1x4, which turns out to be 3.5 here, banding around it. But these work really well. I haven't drilled yet for the the holdfasts for them. We haven't used those quite yet. So, but these are really good, very sturdy, and the tops are really solid for them to work on. All right. Oh, and by the way, I should say that the finish on these is, once I got everything laid, it was pretty level. Once I got everything glued up, I sanded the whole thing with a really coarse 60 grit sandpaper. First on a belt sander, and then I put 60 grit in my random orbital sander, the palm sander. But I keep it really coarse. And then I rub the whole thing with, it's a mixture of finish that I use. It's a third mineral spirits, a third spar varnish, which is more like an outdoor varnish, marine varnish, which is more expandable, and a third boiled linseed oil. So that all the oil soaks in, and the mineral spirits, they kind of dilute, thin down the spar varnish and pushes it really far down into the wood. And then just wipe it all off. So I did 1 full coat, let it sit on there for about 5 minutes, wipe off the excess, let it dry for about a week, and then that was it. It soaked in, but it gave it a nice finish without it being too slick, and I still was able to keep the really coarse texture of the sanding, because that helps to grab the wood when you have it up here. I never want them to be too smooth. I want it to be real coarse. All right, so thanks for asking. That's the workbench that we use here in our house, and they work pretty well. Thanks.